Hello, foolish mortals. Welcome tonight. It's skincare with a scare, full of fright. As I pamper my face and read tales of the night, get ready for chills and skincare delight. Hello, friends. My name is Kayleigh Long, and this is Skincare with a Scare. I'm all about the spooky, the funny, and the weird, and thanks for hanging out with me. Do you like my background? I added some lights. Does that look weird? I can't do anything about it. Yes, those lights are propped up on my couch, but what are you gonna do? If it catches on fire, I'll let you know, but I think it'll be fine. This is our 4th episode of Skincare with a Scare, and let me know how you like it. You should subscribe if you haven't already, and like this video because it's free and it really helps me out a lot. My shirt, it's Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. The TV show that came out in 2019 was literally like all I could watch and all I could think about. Side note, I love Jim Henson and I love the Muppets, but once I found this show, I was hooked. I think it's still on Netflix. I think it got canceled because it came out like right before the pandemic, and it's literally like puppeteers, and if you look at behind the scene clips, I can understand why it got canceled because of that, because all of the puppeteers are just so close, and with COVID and masks and testing, like whatever. I'm hoping one day it'll be brought back, and I would love to be one of the voices. So hey, Jim Henson Studios, cast me. Let me be a voice. I think they're British. I can do that. I can be a voice, please. Okay, I think that's all I have to talk about, so let's just get into today's story. So today, okay, I'm still figuring out how life works with bangs again. Today we are reading from the Reddit thread, People Who Have Survived a Murder Attempt by Dumb Luck and What's Your Story? So I've actually had some people ask me to do true crime skincare with a scare, and I think this is, you know, skincare with a scare is so new. She's my baby. I don't want it to be just one thing. I want it to be like skincare, scary stories, blah. This is kind of like reading Reddit while also kind of true crimey because it's people who have survived murder attempts. Like nobody actually dies. There's a little trigger warning. Some people do get hurt, but they all survive because that's what this thread's about. But you know, if there's a true crime story that you would like me to do, I'm not completely opposed to it. I just want this to be whatever I want it to be, which is everything spooky and scary. So yeah, this is kind of like doing true crime while also not doing true crime. I don't know. Not that I'm against it, again. I'll do it one day. I have done some true crime videos on my channel and I'll put those here, but I haven't done like a true crime and skincare with a scare, so we'll test it out. We'll see. You let me know what you think of it. Merry Christmas to you. I have to say, I'm in the Christmas spirit. As someone who loves Halloween, I've been listening to Christmas music, and I'm probably gonna have my tree in the next video, so sorry not sorry. I figured I'd have one more skincare with a scare this season without a tree, and then the tree's gonna be in there. Now that all the makeup is off my face, I'm gonna give it a quick wash and we will get into our first story. Ugh. Our first account is written by Thrill House Max. Thank God for my nosy neighbors. I always used to hate how nosy they were until this happened. When I was about 10, I was riding my bike outside. My parents always let me ride my bike outside during the summer, but only up and down the street we were on. One day, a man in a van was parked across the street. He called to me, asking if I had seen his dog and could help him find it. Me, being a dumb child, offered to help him find it, and I started walking towards his van. My neighbor, an older white lady, came bolting out of her house hooting and yelling, telling the guy to back off. The dude got back in his car in a hurry and took off. And it wasn't until many years later that I realized how bad of a situation that could have been. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I get it though. When you're a child, you just kind of believe everything that everyone says, and it's, you know, depending on how you were raised and who your parent figures were, you know, you were taught to kind of believe adults. I mean, at least I know I was. I don't think I ever really questioned authoritative figures. Is that the word? Like people in charge until I was like high school, maybe college. And, you know, looking back like, but that's another story. Especially this child, you know, they just figured some guy was looking for his dog and they were ready to help. Of course, the whole van thing. Yeah, I'm sure there are nice people with a van, but I know as a cautionary tale, we're always told like, watch out for vans. And in this case, yeah, I think this person with the van probably wasn't good. Especially since the neighbor was like, get out of here, and he did. Like, it's like he knew he was caught, which is, ugh, grody. It's so gross. I'm glad that child in person is safe. I'm glad you're safe, Thrill House Max. Our next encounter is written by large, and then it's 2 capital P's, guy. You put that together however you want to, but I'm not saying that on my channel, okay? Thanks. When I was about 10, my grandfather was dying from complications of heart issues and mental deterioration. I didn't know him very well, as the last time we'd been in contact with him, I was a baby. My father never liked him and didn't bother coming up with me when my mother went to visit him in the hospital. When we got there, he was resting peacefully, and my mother went forward and whispered some words to him. I imagine about his current state of health. I hung back a little bit because the creepy old guy whom I didn't recall seeing in my whole life really freaked me out. Regardless of my anxiety, my mom said I should approach Grandpa and say some nice words to him. I understood by how sad my mother was that I shouldn't argue too much. So I approached his hospital bed and began to speak to him. He didn't seem conscious at all, so I just did what my mother did, leaning forward and whispered some nice things to him. Things took a turn mid-sentence when his eyes flew open and he stared at me, making me stop what I was saying. My heart dropped into my ass when he looked at me, because it was pure hatred in his eyes. As soon as we made eye contact, he bolted upright from his bed and wrapped his hands around my neck and started choking me as hard as he could. I barely even remember what happened, but my mom was screaming for a nurse. My grandpa kept yelling at me while shaking my neck violently. Fucking betrayal! You betrayed me! And then he died. It's impeccable timing for someone to die. Almost as fast as it began, it was over. His grip loosened and he flatlined. My mother was inconsolable, and I was extremely confused and crying out of the sheer trauma of the situation. Later, after we managed to calm down, a nurse explained to my mother that he had severe dementia, that his dementia had left him barely coherent, and it was likely he thought I was someone else. I didn't learn until several years later, but my mother suspected that my grandfather saw my father in me. My father was an alcoholic womanizer and fairly abusive in my early childhood, and my grandfather resented him for it. I guess I look a little bit too much like my dad. Could you imagine a man that you barely know? You know, you go to see him to say goodbye, to be a good grandchild, a good child to your mother who cares about him, and he chokes you out and then flatlines? That is crazy. I would definitely have to be in therapy. I mean, I'm in therapy now, but if that happened, I would be in therapy. That's really crazy. That's crazy. Okay, next. Slow Hockey 451 writes, my dad had a client that owns a number of fast food restaurants. One day we were working at one of his stores remodeling and talking about robberies. The client told us that he was just getting into the fast food business and lived in Colorado. He was assistant manager at a chain restaurant that required him to wear a tie. A drug addict came into the restaurant to rob them and grabbed him from behind, putting a knife to his throat. He opened the register and the guy attempted to slit his throat anyway, except the knife was dull and couldn't cut through the material of the tie. The client began to fight back and escaped with minor injuries. Addict went to prison, and apparently he has the tie in a frame at home. Yeah, I would probably frame the tie as well. I also would have severe PTSD. That's so scary. Like, you're just doing your job, living your life, and someone tries to slit your throat? Tries to off you? No. No. That's scary. No. I'm gonna wash my face and then I'll read another story. I'm sad. This is my last Hello Kitty fall pumpkin mask. I'm sad, but it's time. We need to use that because now I get to get Christmas ones. Whoa. Take it all in. The last one until next year. So it makes me think of that TikTok sound where it's like meow 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 meow. It's been fun, Hello Kitty pumpkin mask. Let's enjoy this last ride. I do have to fold it over a little just because I have a small head and it would be in my hair and I don't want that. Deleted writes, I was a bouncer at a club in LA for a minute in the 90s. Stopped some dudes clearly affiliated in a gang at the door after they refused security checks. After a few minutes of their threats and Manson lamps, they left spewing all sorts of warnings. A little later, it starts to wind down, and because it's a little slow and we're overstaffed, I start to drink. I get a bit drunk. Not wasted, but sleepy buzzed. So I tell my buddy I'm gonna go lay down in the back seat of his car for a while. After a few minutes of lying down, I realize I need to pee. I get out and stumble a few into a spot between a guard gate, for a parking lot and a building for a little privacy. There are a few dozen people milling around in front of the club. I'm about 25 feet away from the club's entrance and just off an alleyway. While I'm relieving myself, a dude runs right past me, around the guard booth to my rear, and unloads a 9mm into the backseat of the car where I just crawled out of. Bam, 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 unloading into my car. He then turns, runs right past me, and down the alley into the night. I don't think he even saw me at all. Nothing really came of it, except my partner was convinced I was a marked man and refused to be near me for a year or so. Edit. Holy crap. I kind of expected this to get buried. This was in Los Angeles. I was about 25. I'm almost 50 now, so some of the specifics are long gone, but I remember this. My buddy was genuinely terrified by this. I don't think he knew anything about it. In fact, he seemed to interpret this event as a larger conspiracy to have me snuffed, not some random pissed off dude making a point to get back at me. And because my buddy ditched the car / wouldn't take my calls, it got left at that. For those concerned with the car, it was like a 1980s rusted out sedan, maybe a $500 car. Details about the number of rounds that were fired at me were relayed to me by third parties. My friend and I were known in the neighborhood. People were talking about it. Thank you for the well wishes. Honestly though, this wasn't even the first time I was shot at. It's been a strange trip. Also, I tried to argue later that it was likely that the guy was shooting at someone else across the street, and the car just got in the way. But there were holes all through that thinking. Backseat had 4 out of the 5. Another 2 out of the 3 were in the backseat window and ended up in the backs of the front seats. Another 2 out of the 3 rounds went right into the trunk. I honestly don't know if he was a terrible shot or if he hit right what he was aiming for. That's very scary. That's probably going to be my response to all of these. But that's very scary. I've never been shot at. I don't want to be. Guns are wild. Okay, glad that guy's okay. Also, that's not his first time being shot at. That is crazy. Okay, next, Kai Sean writes, I had a friend who had a party at his parents' house when he was in high school that a ton of random people went to. He got super drunk during the party and went upstairs to go to sleep, knowing that his friends would watch the party for him. My friend woke up from his nap to a guy from his school sitting on top of him, stabbing him to death. He was stabbed 7 times before it stopped, and he laid there on the bed, dying. The only reason he's still alive is because his best friend came upstairs to ask him if he was all right. He had just made a frozen pizza and found him. The assailant was put in jail and recently released, and it scares me to know that a guy who wanted to know what it would feel like to kill someone so that during his trial is still out there free. That is scary, as I said before. Why would you want to know what it's like to kill someone? I think that's very weird. Very weird. Hydrate, it's important. Life Selman 91 writes, our neighbors when I was growing up had 3 kids, the same ages as myself and my siblings. We were all friends and got along well for the most part. Their eldest child, I'll call him Peter, had Asperger's syndrome and was known to have outbursts and would sometimes be violent. One day when I was 5 or 6, our mothers decided to take all 6 of us to a nearby wading pool because it was hot out. Well, due to that, it was pretty busy and there was a lot of other kids. There were 2 lifeguards there, but were generally too busy chatting with each other to actually be doing their jobs, as my mother later tells me. I was off with my neighbor's daughter, who was my age, and Peter. I don't remember why, but he suddenly flew into a fit and decided I was at fault for something. He, being about 8 and a lot bigger than me, grabs my head and holds it under the water. I remember that. I remember not being able to breathe. I remember clearly thinking that I needed air, or I was going to die. I remember fighting but not being strong enough to get him off me. Then I remember my mom's face. She had a clear look of both terror and fury. I remember looking over and seeing Peter sitting with his arms around his knees, rocking back and forth as his mother tried to calm him down. Then I remember my mom absolutely losing it on the lifeguards, who had missed everything and were clueless as to why a tiny woman was screaming at them that their daughter had almost drowned on their watch. To this day, I have a fear of swimming and absolutely do not like having my face in the water, even when I'm showering. Have you ever been to the beach and you know when you're sucked under a wave, or you like dip under a wave because you know it's gonna crash and you don't want it to hit you, but the crash is so much bigger than you thought it was gonna be and you're like, oh gosh, I need air. That's what this story makes me think of, and it's a scary feeling. So I'm really sorry that that happened to them, but I am glad that they are okay. But oh my gosh, I hate that feeling. And it's like, oh, is this is how I die? Okay. But still here, motherfucker. Squash writes, I was abducted at a gas station during undergrad. The locks on my car were broken, and as soon as I got back in, a strange man came in and forced me to drive to an ATM. I am paralyzed with fear. So any sense of reason I had went out the window. He claimed he worked at Wendy's, and for my generosity, he would give me all the Wendy's I ever wanted. On the way to the ATM, he showed me pictures of his daughters on his clearly stolen phone. Then a Whitney Houston song came on the radio, and he started bawling his eyes out and screaming, why do all the good people die? Only bad things should happen to bad people. I go to the ATM, take out the cash, and give it to him thinking it's over. He then makes me get back in the car and drive him somewhere else. We pass by some train tracks and I'm thinking, this is it. This is where I will be murdered. He asks me what I'm studying in school, and I tell him biochemistry. I believe in jet propulsion and all that shit. We are not alone. There are aliens among us. A wild thing to say. He then makes me pull over at a gas station and tells me, drive away, sweetheart. I call the cops. I had to do a lineup, and apparently this dude had done this to a ton of other women, and some were less unscathed than I was. I literally just said, this is it, this is how I die, and that's exactly what this writer also thought. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I don't. I think I would probably do the same. I would freeze up and I would just do whatever the guy asked me to, because you're hoping, all right, let me just do this and then he'll leave me alone. But then the fact that she had to drive him somewhere else, oh, that's so scary. But I'm glad she called the cops, because apparently this guy did this to other women, and that is sick and nasty. Bleh. It's time for the pumpkin eye masks. Another last of the season, because hopefully I can find some Christmas tree ones. These are very cute, but it's time for Christmas trees or candy canes or whatever I can find. Sarah Soros writes, my sister had this one friend when we were growing up I always got a bad vibe from. She would try to pick on my little brother, but I would always stop her. I was about 8, she was 10. Once we were at a lake and all the kids were swimming. I swam out to the deep roped off part, but I was still little and I really shouldn't have. She kept acting weird and getting closer to me and making this weird laugh. She pushed me off the wooden pole and into the water, and I got scared and started to swim back, but she came up behind me and pushed me under the water. It didn't click at first that she was trying to drown me, but after she aggressively pushed me under a third time, I had this crazy moment of clarity. It was like the world slowed down ever so briefly. I relaxed and let myself sink, swam underneath her, and came up behind her. I grabbed her hair and shoved her face into the water, keeping my legs on her back so her body couldn't rise. I waited until her struggle slowed down and let her come back up. I waited in the water, saying nothing, bracing myself for her retaliation, and she just looked panicked and swam to the shore. I told my sister, who had already expressed that the girl was weird. We confronted her together, and she just looked really dazed. In a monotone voice, she said, I'm sorry. I didn't know it would be like that. It wasn't until I replayed those words in my mind later that I realized what she was saying was, sorry I tried to drown you. It wasn't until I almost drowned myself that I realized how horrible it was to do it to someone else. So I was reading that, and at first I was like, is this girl like trying to what? But I guess it was self-defense. She was like, you know what, bitch, if you're gonna try and hold me underwater, I'm gonna do it to you too. Which honestly, slurve. I just said like slurve, which is slay and serve, slurve. Sometimes bullies just don't know what it's like until you do it to them. I'm not out here saying to bully your bully, but like if your bully is trying to kill you, yeah, maybe you should bully your bully. Maybe you should bully your bully. That's crazy. I hope that girl got her shit together. Green Light Tracer writes, I was exiting a bar once after last call and was with a friend who was a medic. We saw a girl laying in a snowbank near a telephone pole who had just been hit by a car. We ran over and tried to help her. Some others were already on the phone with 911, and I, not having any medical training, didn't have anything to contribute, but I didn't just want to leave. The whole situation was concerning. I turn around for a second and I start to hear people screaming, and a minivan was heading for us and the few people around this woman. They already started to run, but I was too late. He hit me just as I was trying to flee. Put the car in reverse, ran over me again, and then went forward over me a third time. Turns out the guy was high and drunk. and got into a fight with a woman's boyfriend, whom I bared a strong resemblance to. He thought I was him. Not to throw a pity party for myself, but 9 years later, I still have a ton of medical issues. And my life pretty much started on a downward spiral since then. But sure, I guess I survived. For everyone wondering about the guy, an off-duty cop watched the whole thing go down and copied his license plate number. He was apprehended 20 minutes later and charged with attempted murder, along with other things. He pleaded out in just 3 years in jail. He actually killed someone else a few years before drunk driving. How they thought that was appropriate is beyond me. Okay, couple thoughts. Don't drink and drive. Don't get high and drive. Also, when you get in a fight with someone at a bar, it's always stupid and like worthless and like literally can ruin your life and someone else's, because he's running over this guy who isn't the guy he got in the fight with and has like fucked up this guy's life. I have no compassion for losers who do that stuff. That's so weird. Get a hobby, go to therapy, like work on yourself, because like driving drunk is stupid. And he killed someone else. It wasn't even like this guy who he thought was the other guy is his only victim. Like, how fucking weird. How weird and lame can one person be? I'm really sorry for the guy and the girl who this happened to. Stupid. Especially, like, we live in the future, right? I love living in the future. But the fact that this guy, or anyone who like gets high and drives or drinks and drives, like, call an Uber, call a Lyft, call your friend, walk. Don't get behind a wheel. Don't drive. It's just not, it's stupid. It's not worth it. I'm looking at this next person's username and I don't know what is going on with like of nether region usernames in this video, but this person's name is called Underpants Bandit. Underpants Bandit writes, my husband and I live above our place of business. Our alarm company called us at 3 a.m. to say that there was a motion detector alert, just one in a weird place. We assumed it was a mouse, but went to reset it / check it out. My husband ended up face to face with a burglar who was on his way out the window he had broken. He ran back inside. I called 911 and we heard mad chaos going on in the depths of the building. Some crashing and smashing. The burglar monkey climbed a 10-foot iron gate, bodily smashed through 2 sets of commercial grade glass doors, and was outside again. My husband was like, yeah, fuck this dude. Tore after him and tackled him. He got him on the ground and pinned him down. Bear in mind, the whole time I'm narrating this to 911 and chasing around in panties and a tank top. I was a bit behind my husband in the middle of the street, about 15 feet away, when a minivan squealed around the corner. It was his girlfriend / getaway driver. I luckily missed it. I was super focused on reading the license plate, which was one of those cutesy font out-of-state ones. Therefore, it was hard to read, and she yelled, "Get the fuck off of him or I'm running over you, bitch!" She then tried to. The audio and the video I had to watch for the trial was horrifying. I had blocked it out nearly completely and really didn't remember how close it was. She guns the engine at me. I throw my hands up in front of my face when I realize what she's doing and I scream and jump out of the way within inches to spare. He jumped in and off they went. He bled all over my husband and eventually the DNA and partial plate info nailed them. They're both now in prison. Just to make this clear, do not do this. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug, and it's best not to fight burglars. We definitely both could have died. It was the 3rd time this fucker had broken in, and it caused thousands of mostly uninsured damage. He wouldn't have stopped doing it. He was a pro and was doing upwards of 3 jobs a night, all over the state for years. Now, I would say my business is YouTube. Like, you know, this is my baby, but someone breaks in, I'm like, hey, you can take my camera. You can take that, and you can take that. Oh, and take that over there, cause I'm not getting beat up over this. Now I get it. 3, 4 times, and especially if this person isn't stopping, and they're a pro, and they're robbing a bunch of people. I don't know. Maybe if I had a man to fight with me, but like me alone, I'm like, hey, you can take that. I didn't really want this camera. Actually, let me not manifest I get my ass robbed. But, you know, I would be scared. I was scared. Cool. Okay, this username looks crazy. It looks like Stay at the Madad. Stay at the Madad writes, my supposed best friend decided that my wife and I were too perfect. Fuck. Therefore, it must all be an act, and was obviously abusing her. What the hell? He was at our house after I made an awesome dinner, and we were having fun drinking and singing karaoke. I went to the kitchen to put some glasses away, came back and leaned on the couch with him slightly behind me, to the left of me. Then I heard a thunk and felt an amazing amount of pain on the top of my head. He had picked up the whiskey bottle on the table and smashed it into my skull. I was very confused as to what the fuck was happening. Then the blood started to pour. I didn't want to get blood everywhere, so I went into the kitchen. Dude is pacing back and forth and saying weird shit. I thought about my gun, which was close by, but I wasn't quite thinking straight. And then he left. I had a huge concussion and still suffer side effects from it. My number 2 goal in life is to live longer than that asshole, just so I can shit on his grave. Weird! People are, you know, the longer I live, and what? I'm 25, I don't know anything. But the longer I live, the more I realize people are so weird. This guy thought his friend's marriage was so good that it was an act, so he needed to kill him and hit him on the head with a whiskey bottle. It's weird, dude. That's weird. Not the guy who got hit, his ex-friend. I guess it also goes to show, like, you don't know who you're friends with and you don't know what your friends are thinking, which is like, ah, so scary. Talk about like a horror movie. I mean, I definitely do that thing where I'm like, do any of my friends like me or do they just tolerate me? And then no. Or rationally, I'm like, are these intrusive thoughts? Or are they real? Maybe that's what all crazy people say. I'm such a chapstick girly. I actually got this from the dollar store. It's a vanilla bean one, and the flavor, the scent, not flavor, the scent is just wonderful. I think we're gonna stop there today because I'm hungry. But that was the Reddit thread, people who have survived a murder attempt. By dumb luck, what's your story? It was a good thread. There was a lot of like wild things, and I definitely did not read them all, so maybe I'll come back to this again one day. You let me know what you like to see. If you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and comment down below what you would like to see next. Would you like me to do an actual true crime case? Would you like me to read other Reddit threads? I was looking on Reddit as I'm trying to like learn how to use it and be wonderful at using Reddit. Well, I want to be wonderful in general, but you know what I mean. I saw this one about like morticians and like mortician stories, because I'm sure they've got some freaky deaky stories. Thank you again for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, whatever you're watching, wherever you're watching. You're cool. I'm trying to figure out a way to get back into my end spiel. Hit the bell to get notified anytime I post. And as always, stay spooky, my friends. Bye!